Remember?
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it's no surprise to see such a strong turnout from this family that we have here in this very special place. We are here to share some memories. It's really a pretty informal program. We've got a couple special members of our some leadership team for our memory sharing tonight, C. Strine and Harriet Hunt. And we're going to start off with memories of Linda VanDam. And I just want to say in advance, I know that a few people have to move their way to another event. And so we want to make sure that anybody who needs to take off jumps in nice and early and lets us know that they want to share something before they have to leave. So I'm going to turn it over to these ladies, and again, thank you all for coming out today. And we're going to have a little time at the end to mingle a little bit more, and we've got some guest books here and some extra paper to share memories, so if there's anything you didn't get to say, be sure and put it here, and we'll make sure that the families get everything. So thank you so much, and I give you Cease and Harriet.
Thank you. First I want to say how I'm overwhelmed with the turnout, especially this time of year when there's so many things going on. So thank you all again. I echo that. I want to start with, I can't, by the way, and I see Harriet has notes too. This is difficult. It's a wonderful thing, but also emotional, so I have to use my notes. George Booth is credited with saying, "The only way to have is to give. The only way to keep is to share, and the only thing worth finding is opportunity." Linda and Hal lived this motto. They gave their hearts to teaching, shared their many talents, and in doing so, had careers and lives that keeps them in the thoughts of their colleagues, friends, and students, long after they left the opportunity they found at Cranbrook. Harriet's going to begin by talking about Linda.
Thank you all for being here. I do have to say that it's a little like being in a Twilight Zone episode here to see so many people and we all seem to have changed through the years. But thank you for helping me and all of us have the opportunity to talk about Linda. I've been struggling since the day we talked about having this gathering, what to say. I've started over and over again. I've talked to friends. I've torn pieces of paper up. Really, really having a hard time how do you honor a friend. So the crumbling pressure made me realize I was trying to say it all. So I have decided that rather than begin with Linda's upbringing in Holland, Michigan, her marriage to Ed, the births of their beautiful daughters, Beth and Jane, their family tenting adventures in Africa, biking trek in Netherlands, to the year the VanDams lived in England, to Linda's friendship, her talents, and to the hole that's left. I realize you might not want to settle into your seats for all of that. So we'll concentrate on her life here. If you were in Mrs. VanDam's classroom, you were in for a first-class year, not just because the academic achievements you would make, but because Linda had it all when it came to the very heart, the essence of superior teaching, an educator's unsung and often undervalued acts. Of compassion, respect, acceptance, encouragement, empathy, and the most important of all, sense of humor. Mrs. VanDam knew how to make school challenging, yet entertaining, and many of you alums may remember your first day of grade 1, because at the end of the day, you would get to take home your very own loaf of handmade bread. Well, she had spiked your lesson, because not only did you learn how to make bread, you learned how to read the recipe, and she gave you a math lesson on common measurements. That's a sign of an excellent teacher. If you were under Mrs. VanDam's wing, don't look at me, for the school year, you knew that your teacher wholeheartedly loved being there. She believed that you couldn't just choose to become a teacher, but that teaching had to choose you. She laughed freely and frequently, and why wouldn't she? Spend one day in an elementary school classroom and you've got material for a year of stand-up comic routines. She did not miss a thing. And now I'm going to bore Jane and Ed because they have heard this joke way too many times, but it's a good one, and Linda loved it. One day she ran into my classroom laughing hysterically and waving this thing, and she said, "Look what I got, look what I got." And it was a little note to her from a parent, and on the envelope it said, "To Mrs. VanDam it." Not making that up. Okay. Finally, I want to mention Linda's brute strength, her mental backbone. The news of her illness left everyone thunderstruck. Too unbelievable to take in, too much to hear. A tragic, constantly looming cloud. Somehow, she found a way to be present every day. She managed to find humor in life. She managed to make every family moment count. She managed to observe it is what it is. She managed to be a wife, a mother, a grandmother. And she managed never to lose the joy in her match made in heaven 51-year marriage to Ed. Thank you. Second grade teacher has offered to read a lovely letter that Doug and Sharon Cooper have written.
Well, I'm honored to be here. I have to say that I was a newbie at Brookside, and Linda was the most wonderful mentor that a person could ask for. I mean, her sense of humor got us through a lot of crazy days in first grade, and her creativity was just immense. So I really feel so lucky to have had the ability to work with her and also to call her a friend. So this is a tribute to Linda from Doug and Sharon. It says, "Every parent with a child entering first grade desperately hopes that their child will have a teacher who will recognize the special qualities of their child and foster the confidence needed for success in school, a teacher like Linda VanDam." Linda was a very special teacher. She made her classroom like a second home for her young students. Her kindness, acceptance, and gentle yet strong encouragement created an environment for success for everyone in her class. Our own 2 children blossomed both academically and personally under her guidance. Linda recognized that each child had unique strengths and enabled her students to use those strengths to enhance their learning. As a 3rd grade teacher, Linda continued her creativity in teaching, such as baking bread for math and science lessons. The resulting wonderful aromas made faculty members on her floor suddenly find a reason to visit her classroom. No one was more welcoming, both in the classroom and in her home, than Linda. We are so fortunate to have had Linda as our children's teacher and to have Linda and Ed and Beth and Jane as our very good friends. Doug and Sharon Cooper.
Waterman, and a friend for a long time of the VanDams. Glad to see Jane here. My daughter, Shauna, when she started here in first grade, the first person she sat next to in first grade was Beth VanDam, because Beth VanDam was doing some interesting things, and she sat right next to somebody because she was drawing something, and Shauna thought that was very creative. Beth and Shauna have been lifelong friends. They're both now in California. My daughter's in the TV industry, and Beth is a screen designer And Beth has recently redecorated my daughter's apartment. So even though they have been apart at various times in their lives, they are together again and have followed each other ever since. But as I come into this building, and I haven't been in Brookside for quite a while, the Bogies are here, and some of the people were here with my daughter Shauna, and my son Tucson came later. And just so many memories and how these walls and the people who are here helped to shape my children's character and their futures. And it's just marvelous to be here again. But I just wanted to say that as Linda set so many high standards for me, really set benchmarks that it was hard to follow. You know, as I was busy in my ophthalmology practice and just trying to get the kids to school and do all the things that was necessary to do as a mother and a full-time employee, Linda had the time to bake homemade bread, you know. And so when we needed to bring snacks for kids at school, and Linda would have these wonderful homemade cookies that were warm out of the oven. You know, I'd be running to the grocery trying to pick up some boxes of cookies for my share, and I felt so undeserving. And I was told that by my children. I was not like someone like Linda VanDam, you know. And I remember when I think Linda started as a part-time as teaching, and then later on she went on to full-time as Beth and Jane got older. And I remember Beth came and told me that you had told her, Ed, that she could only go to full-time if she continued to make her homemade breads. And I said, that was a good thing because I'd be divorced, you know, if my husband handed that of me. So I was very happy that my family was not holding me to the same standards as Linda VanDam. And she was such a wonderful, creative, artistic person. In addition to other things, Beth used to come home with all kinds of projects that she would teach Shauna how to do. And I remember that whenever there was a Halloween, Beth and Jane would come to school in these wonderfully beautiful, handmade, sewn, creative costumes. And the best I could do was, you know, buy something from Kmart or something that I could easily. So I am glad that I have survived the traumatic period of motherhood of growing up to Linda VanDam, who was a wonderful teacher and guidance. And just to have the friendship with the families. We have followed each other. My children spent a lot of time in the VanDam's home, and likewise. And that as Ed and Linda knew how to retire, some of us don't know how to retire well, such as myself, but to go to Holland and now to be close to Jane right there in Portland, Oregon. So the families have always been great. You know, it's wonderful sometimes the roads that your children take you onto, and we're very happy that through our children we are friends and continue to be and remember and honor Linda through our friendship with the VanDams. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having this memorial service so we can remember that.
And my husband and I lived on campus for a number of years, and we had been here a few years before Linda and Ed came. And you would think that we would have been the welcoming couple to the VanDams, but it was just the reverse because they were so outgoing and friendly. And I'm speaking as a friend because I knew Linda and Ed and the girls, Beth and Jane, before Linda started teaching here. And the girls did spend time together. And this theme about the bread, it does go on. First of all, her kindness and being such a helpful person and listening to problems that we had as young mothers and dealing with them. She was just so wonderful, and that laugh, nobody could laugh like Linda. What a joy to hear her. But unfortunately, the same thing happened. My girls would go to the VanDams for lunch and come back, and they would have had a marvelous time, and then we would reciprocate, and I can remember the first time that we did, and Linda and, I don't know what happened. I mean, I guess now I know it's Ed's fault. I served a bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread. And Jane is the one that said, "What is this?" She had never eaten store-bought bread because Linda made her loaves of bread on Saturday and rolls. So that was the last time I think they came over for lunch. That was it.
Ed, it's so wonderful to see you and Jane here. Our family started out with Linda early on because she was caring for children in the earliest years, and I brought Jared into the world and didn't know what I was doing. And he's here for his 20th reunion this weekend, so I guess it's going pretty well. The VanDams opened their home to us as well each day, and one of the things that I knew each morning was that I was going to be writing down questions about motherhood and things that happened, but I didn't want to ask her all 15 or 20 when I dropped them off. So I spread it out during the week. I'd ask 3 and say, "Gee, what about this?" Casually, like it just came to my mind. But I had this piece of paper in my book bag before I came here to teach. And she was remarkable in that she always had an answer. And she also pretended that it had just come up. She knew and what was going on. The recipe file to this day contains her handwriting, the white bread recipe, the strawberry shortcake. And I don't think a winter has gone by that I have not made the chicken noodle soup. Because I make it knowing everyone's going to be sick at some point, and then I just whip it out of the freezer, and it's Lynn's recipe. Not had such great luck with that French bread recipe, a little bit with the white, but a remarkable influence in our family, on our family, certainly on parenting and mothering and teaching and growing and learning and gardening and sewing and all of the things that she brought to our world and her family, and so generously to other families. So thank you very much for sharing.
10 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer, Linda was in my head a lot of the time during my journey. I wanted to emulate her ability to, as Harriet said, live life to the fullest, to accept it is what it is, and to go forward. And you need to know that. She was a role model and here for me during that time.
I'm Judy Thurman, and I was a teammate with Linda for a number of years before she retired. And one of the thoughts I had before coming here today was, and I'm sorry for my back to you, was when it was a time when she was developing the arthritis, and it was so painful for her, for all of her joints, and it was hard for her to walk. And our Greenfield Village trip for 3rd graders was coming up, and a couple of us, Carol Smith and myself, had talked about it. What are we going to do? Because she certainly was not going to be able to walk around the village, let alone walk, the distance from even the bus, ride the bus. So we came up with a different plan, and well, she did really, and she dressed in a old-fashioned outfit as the children did, and we had made arrangements with the village, and they had one of the replicas of the Model T types of cars, and so she rode in that up to the schoolhouse, and all the children were still outside the schoolhouse expecting something. We said something special is going to happen, and they couldn't wait. They didn't know what they were waiting for, and then when she drove up and she waved to them, she just gave a wonderful wave, and she had a hat with a scarf that came down, and old-fashioned outfit, And I can see it to this day. And the kids just cheered. They were so excited to have seen her come. And then, you know, she spent a few minutes talking to them because they came up to the gate area. And then she really she couldn't stay for the day. It was just too difficult for her. But that's a testament to her courage and strength and endurance and doing things. And the other one, I did write to be on that little webpage, but was when she invited us over to her home several times for a glass of wine, and she baked some things. And one time when we were there, she had this hot paraffin wax machine out, and we all got to dip our hands in it. And we were sitting around, and we were like, well, the only problem is we can't eat and we can't drink. But it was very relaxing, and it was fun, and it just shows how warm and caring she always was. So, thank you.
I'm David Cox, and my unique relationship with the VanDams is that we were neighbors on Valley Way for my entire time there until they retired. And it gave me a different perspective than maybe some of you, because although I taught math in the upper school, Ed was in the science department and Linda was down here. My one first real encounter, though, with Linda was a knock on the door to say that the apartment that I was living in, this was as a bachelor, my living room wall was Beth and Jane's bedroom wall. And could I do something about my stereo because I was intruding upon their bedtime? And so eventually I would move into the apartment in the next building identical to theirs. So we shared that commonality and spent many times, as they were gracious with my primarily bachelor life, to invite me over to do things with them. But as you've just heard, I want to be the one to put in just a couple of pieces of information. So it's not really levity at this moment. It's to say you have forgotten one family member. Some of us have not forgotten Putter. That was their dog, who had a unique way of visiting campus, and I mean all of it.
That was Julie Kusmal's fault. She taught him all the bad habits.
But I briefly end with what you just heard. Her courage as an individual. When we think about what we try to teach the kids that we work with at Cranbrook, try to foster their independence, try to say to them that there's not one linear way to get from one place to another. If my memory serves me correct, this is one of the ways that Linda got to this building was putting Ed through graduate school. And when you hear the type of jobs that she was willing to do to support that before developing her own educational career, I'll let you ask questions and discover that on your own. But it's also reflective in those time periods when I was obviously much closer to the pain that she was experiencing and her efforts with the experimental drug to try to control it, and how she maintained her sense of personage with all the characteristics you've talked about. And so, as I said, it's not such a moment of levity. It's my way of praising a woman who took life at different points and said, okay, here's what I want to do. And so do I miss her? Absolutely. But I still get to hang out with someone who's been influenced by her and created by her, and clearly she's influenced him. And so I actually attend the Birmingham Methodist Church, and one of the people that I know there is a childhood friend of the VanDams. And so their connection through the state of Michigan is, that's what happens. You live in Holland, and then you live over on this side of the state. And so Now it's Portland. We'll probably hear more stories of VanDams and their influence on people. But thank you for listening.
Off, we understand completely, just go as needed, but yeah, if anybody else has any other memories of Linda to share, we can circle back. Cease maybe will get us started.
Susan, can I just?
Yes, absolutely.
Just say thank you all
Absolutely.
very, very much.